Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of our Tech Talk series. So, for today, we have prepared a very exciting topic, especially with the holidays is just around the corner, and many of us are preparing for time to rest and celebrate. But as we also know, this is also when systems are most vulnerable to disruption. So, whether it's a server failure, applications, databases, or any unexpected outage. So in today's session, we'll cover how you can achieve an unstoppable uptime and talk about the foundation and essentials of this disaster recovery strategies. And we will explore how you automate and orchestrate full DR solutions in the cloud using OCI full stack disaster recovery with database cloud services. So I'm your host. I'm Leo Alvarado, and I'm very thrilled to introduce my co-host, our special guest, Mr. Suraj Ramesh. So he's a key member of the product management team behind Full Stack DR, Oracle Database Maximum Availability Architecture, online redefinition, and who has worked on some of the most innovative and coolest features of OCI Full Stack DR. So, hi, Mr. Suraj. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the Tech Talk.
Thank you, Leo.
Okay, so for this session, we have prepared some of the learning points. So first, we'll go through the to learn about full stack disaster recovery concept, and then we'll jump in on understanding OCI full stack disaster recovery capabilities, and then we'll cover on how you can orchestrate full stack DR recovery with a single click, which is very interesting, and how you can use this OCI full stack DR automation for your Oracle database cloud services, and then we'll also touch a bit on how you can mitigate the impact on databases during disaster recovery in the cloud. And with that, let's start with the one for did you know? It's like, did you know that you can orchestrate uh recovery with single click? And that signals me to hand it over to my co-host to talk about the benefits of full stack DR that it can provide. So over to you, Suraj.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, let me share my screen. Yeah, yeah. Good day, everyone. Thanks for joining again today's call. Yeah, I just want to start with what Leo was mentioning, right? So, example, if you are running mission critical workloads today in OCI with your disaster recovery setup, which is already configured according to your business requirements and then your RTO and RPO requirements, right? Then ideally, customers today, if they don't use full stack DR, right, they will go through a run book and then multiple peoples will be involved in order to do the recovery process, right? So why I put this slide is this is again we got a feedback from our customer, right? When a disaster happens, uh, it it most probably they may not have enough people, right, to bring them everyone into a call or a Zoom call or whatever it is to in order to start the recovery process in order to bring their critical system, right? I'm sure you'll be able to relate this in case if you are part of any mission critical recovery process or you have done any DR drills or any sort of things, right? So failure can happen anytime, right? So that's where things like full stack DR can help you to improve or optimize your recovery runtime process. And also, I just want to show you, right? Again, typical D run book where you have been involved, right? So, example, I've just given a demo application, right? Where, in case if you want to do, again, this run book is for a planned switch over from one region to another region, right? Where you get folks from multiple team, right? From application, database, OS, right? The idea is to show you, right? It can be done, but generally you need to have people from every expertise, right, and then they have to go through and then complete their task and hand it over to the respective people to the next kind of task, right, and eventually you'll complete the recovery process, right? So before I go into the service, I just thought to give an idea about right currently how our customers do DR in case if they want to do a switchover or failover in OCI, right? If they are not using full stack. So with that, I will talk about the benefits of the service, right? What it does, right? So as the slide suggests, right, you can do the recovery process once everything is aligned, right, with a single click of a button, and it is easy to use and less effort to manage, and also you can do it in a quicker and also efficient way. So this is a fully managed service available in OCI, right? I have some demos which I will show you in the end, like how the service looks like in console. So stay around for that. So it's a fully managed service available in OCI, similar to any of the platform as a service, right? So you can just get started in terms of configuring the recovery plans according to your requirements. And the good thing with the service, right? You can because most of our initial OCI regions, right, are multi AD regions. So we have customers who even use their production and DR across two availability domains, right? So that's where full stack DR can also support both intra as well as inter regions, right? So as long as you have a DR between two ADs or two regions, then you can still use service. But the recommended approach is to use cross regions, right? Because that's where you get better in terms of your DR capabilities, right? So in full stack DR, we have a concept called protection groups, which I'll talk about. So customers will generally organize their application stacks according to their business requirements, and then they can do the recovery process in a seamless manner, right? And we have also a lot of validation, right? Any DR recovery process, one of the key aspect is uh, doing the validation and doing the pre-checks, right? Because you have to make sure before running a DR plan whether everything is in sync in terms, let's say your data guard is in properly in sync, your storage replication is everything is intact, right? So you have to make sure your validation are done properly before executing your plan. So we have validate default validation built in with all the plans that you create, and also you can use plans like drill plans where you can even use your DR infrastructure to perform your testing without impacting the production, right? So to add on more, right? So this is how you can imagine, like, let's say you have two regions. One is your primary region and the secondary region. So for this example, let's take you run your production in Ashburn and then you have your DR in Phoenix, right? Then you would have went ahead and set up your infrastructure database and then on top of your application, right? So pretty straightforward, right? According to your RTO and RPO requirements, you would have set up the replication across all layers, right? So, for example, for all the database servers, the data guard will be used to set up the replication into other region. And then similarly for infrastructure services, right? Like if you're leveraging block storage, file storage, and object storage, then there are core APIs available from the respective services to do the replication, right? So setting up the replication is super important, right? So that you have your continuous data getting replicated into the other region that can be used during your recovery process, right? So once you have that, then you can use full stack DR to do the orchestration, right? So that's on top of all the things which you set up, and then using full stack DR, can automate and orchestrate your recovery process for your business system, right? So that's what it is mentioned here. You can do the orchestration for your compute database and application, and it supports both inter and intra regions. So when you create a plan, the service has intelligence because we work closely with all the core OCI API, I mean services and APIs. Then we have the built-in intelligence to automatically pre-populate certain recovery steps, right? So that I will talk about in detail, probably in upcoming slides, and I'll show it in demo as well. And the biggest benefit I could say, right, from a customer or operator perspective is, right, you can do everything from a single pane of glass, right? So you can basically validate your DR run plans and then execute and monitor, troubleshoot, right? Basically, you can do everything from a single pane of glass. So you don't need to go through multiple places in OCA console, or you don't need to go and type certain commands to perform steps, right? So you can completely avoid that, and all that can be done from a single pane of glass. So this is what, in short, the service does. And then this slide talks about the built-in out of the box configuration things which we have with OCI full stack DR. So let me start with the database, right? Because this is the tech talk where we want to focus more on the database thing, but of course we have things with other layers as well. So we have integration with all our Oracle Database Managed Service, starting from BaseDB, and then Exadata base dedicated, and then Exadata Exascale, and then Exacc, and also autonomous offerings, right? Autonomous serverless dedicated, and then also autonomous cloud customer. So for all the Oracle Database Managed Service, uh, barring the global distributed database, we have the integration available with full stack BI. And being it's beyond our database, you can also integrate your storage services like file, block, and object. And then from a compute, the virtual machine and dedicated virtual machine. And this is going to come pretty short. That's why you could see it's been marked as asterisks. So this is a support coming up in probably next 2 to 3 months. So that's what we are planning. So even you can automate your Kubernetes workloads running in an OK cluster, right? So that's one of the major feature we are planning to release in upcoming months. And of course, you can also add your load balancer and VCM, right? So the importance of this, right? When you discover any of these services, then the service automatically pre-populate the recovery steps for you, right? So that's the significance of all this member type or these core services which is being showed here. So let me go through some of the benefits before I do technical details of the service, right? Because it is important to understand why, what kind of benefits you can get, right, to use this. I mean, if you start are planning to use this service, right? It helps to make your recovery process much easier, right? So I talked about the single pane of glass, right? So before that, I showed you an Excel runbook, right? So if you do that currently, then you could imagine the complexity of doing the recovery process and also giving a handover to the next step, right? So you have a lot of things in between before you move on to the next step, right? But if you use this service, right, then you can completely normalize the way how you do your DR operations today, right? Which will help you to improve even your RTO significantly, right? And then the second point, what does mean by DR at scale, right? So generally, when we see our customers, right, like it does not one business system, right? So you'll be running, let's say, I'm just calling out some examples, right? You might be running e-business suite, you'll be running PeopleSoft, you'll be running JD Edwards, or any non-Oracle application, right? So generally, a lot of applications are there to which will be hosted in OCI. So in case if you want to do the DR operations for all business systems, right, then practically it is not possible to have multiple people to do the recovery process by a human, right? So that's where it helps you to do your DR process DR recovery at scale. If you pre-populate and create all the plans upfront, then you can just click a button and then monitor all the recovery process, right? So that's where you can reduce your downtime of your application significantly. And it is very easy to use, right? Being the plan is created, right? Assuming the operator has a necessary authentication and authorization, right? Then even a person without having any specialized knowledge of actually what it's running can execute. And then if there are any errors, right, then the experts can be called out to troubleshoot, right? So it is really, really easy to use. And I touched upon about the validation. So there are two things you can do. One is pre-checks. So that is something which is built in with every plans you create, right? Without doing the actual execution of the plan, we'll make sure all the things are in stack before going in and doing, right? So that is one for pre-check. The second thing is DR drills, right? So the name suggests you can actually use this plan type to perform a complete dry run of your business system, right? So example, you can convert your physical standby database into a snapshot standby and then spin up a VM and then connect to your application. And once it is done, you can tear down and then convert back to the original state, right? So this will be really helpful, right, to in order to perform your DR testing without impacting your production application. And the beauty of this service, right? So, example, if you already have a run book which you do, right, then basically you're not throwing anything away, right? Because when you add all these members which we support, right, then the service automatically pre-populate the recovery steps for you, right? And apart from that, if you are using any scripts, which is something specific for your application or business system, where we don't provide the out of the box, then you can simply plug in those scripts within the service, right? So the service is highly flexible. So you don't need to throw away your existing automation in case if you already have something. You can use that and you can even optimize it better with the built-in things which we provide with our service. Yeah, this service is flexible as I mentioned, right? So we don't mandate you need to deploy DR in certain way, right? Rather than whatever you have, right? Example, these are some of the terminologies I'm sure you might have heard about, like cold DR, VM failover, pilot light. Right? Basically, this is nothing how you deploy your application infrastructure and database and all the things according to your business requirements. So the full stack DR doesn't mandate you need to have certain type of topology. As long as you have deployed in a specific way you want with the replications configured, then you can integrate with full stack DR. I touched upon the built-in modules, right? All the members which you saw in the previous slides, when you add, the recovery steps will be pre-populated, right? And then, of course, on top of it, you can also customize the plan to bring your own automation to cover the overall DR plans. And the last but not least is this is a fully managed service, right? In order to use the service, you don't need to run any specialized replication servers or image servers or conversion servers, right? So you can just straight away start using and then start configuring the recovery plans for your business system. Okay. So with that, I will start talking about some of the technical concepts, right? And then after with this, I will spend some time exclusively about the database service, how tightly it is integrated, right? Because we want to show you the tighter integration with all the database service we provide, right? Before I move on to the actual technical, I just want to reiterate these two key terminologies and how this relates with the full stack DR as well. So RPO, as you know, it's how much data loss you can have, right? It depends upon your backup and the replication, how you configure. And then the RTO is how much time, right, it takes to bring your system or do your recovery process, right? Uh, One of the common questions we get more often is, okay, I have a production and a DR, and then I've configured the replication according to our requirements. What kind of RTO and RPO I could expect if I integrate my DR things with full stack DR, right? That's what it is mentioned here, right? So we don't have an exclusive setting of having a setting with RPO and RTO. So basically, we rely on the core services, like how you set up your replication and the respective services, what kind of RPO it's providing, right? So example, if you are using the Oracle Data Guard, right, cross region, then you set up, let's say for base database, right, you set up the asynchronous replication, right? So you get an idea about what kind of data loss you get, right? Similarly, if you are using, let's say, a block storage volume group replication, the block storage service provides less than 15 to 15 minutes of RPO, and similarly, all other services have, right? So the short thing from this slide is full stack DR doesn't have a control in terms of RPO because all we do is we rely on the core services API and that gets integrated with full stack DR. And with RTO, right? Again, since we do it in a much automated way, it definitely improves in terms of your overall recovery time, right? Because we're not doing anything manually or we don't have anything dependent on performing by a human, or right. So you don't need completely avoiding that factor, right? So that means your RTO will definitely improve, but again, the service doesn't have a control, right? Because what we do, right, let's say you have a primary and standby database integrated with the BaseDB, and then when you create a switchover plan, right, then we basically use the API of the BaseDB service to invoke the switchover operation. And then once it is done, we'll complete it and then we'll move on to the next step, right? So it depends on how quickly that respective services complete the task, and then handshake is provided to the full stack layer, right? But based upon our experience with our customers, everyone who has used the service, they've told us they are able to reduce their recovery time 3x time, 4x time, even 4x time for some of their business system, right? But in short, it does. I mean, our full stack data doesn't have a direct control for both RPO and RTO, but RTO can be improved because of the nature of how we automate the overall DR process. Okay, let's start with the core concepts. So I mentioned about the protection groups, right? So this is the uh, core concept which you create with full stack DR, right? So you could imagine this as a container of your business system, right? Where you add your compute and the database and all the things which is part of that side, right? So you create the protection group according to your application and then organize it in a specific way you want. So example, let's say you run your app, I mean your primary in Ashburn and then your DR in Phoenix, then you basically create two protection groups in both region and then associate the roles. Hey, this is my primary and this is my standby. Right? So let's see that in an upcoming slides. So I already touched upon the members. If you remember the circle, right, where I showed what are the services we have in terms of member support. Just want to reiterate again. Oracle database, we support all this service, right? BaseDB, ExaDBD, ADBS, ADBD, and then Exascale, XSCC, and ADBD Cloud at Customer. And then from a compute virtual machine and dedicated virtual machine, and then storage, boot, block, file, and then object, and load balancer, and OK is coming up soon. So there are multiple plan types you can create. So once you create the protection groups, right, after you add the members, then you can create various DR plan types. So there are three major types of plan. One is switchover, and the second one is failover, and the third one is drill plans. So in drill, there are two types. One is start drill and the stop drill. So let me explain what exactly are these plan types and what are the difference between them, right? So let's start with switchover. So switchover, as the name suggests, right? This plan will be used for the plan maintenance where you want to shut down everything in primary and move everything to the DR, right? So if you have such a requirement, then ideally you should use the switchover plan. And the failover plan is intended for actual DR scenario, right? So if something, a major flood which happened and then your primary region is gone, right? Then you can use a failover plan to recover all the things in the DR region. And then the third type is called drill plans, where you can use it this plan for performing any mock testing, right? So without touching your production, you can do a dry run in the DR region. So start drill, as the name suggests, you start your database or convert it into a specific role which can your application can access, and then do other stuff so that you can do proper testing. And once you're done, you're satisfied, you can do the stop drill, which convert backs or terminate the stuff which is getting created in the start drill operation. So these are the four plan types and the difference between all four. And in the plan, when you create, by default, right, I talked about the pre-checks. So every plan you create, there will be a pre-check plan group, what we call, which will get populated. And apart from that, you will be able to see things like built-in. So when you see built-in, these are the steps which the service pre-populate for you, right? For example, in this plan, I have compute and database where the service automatically pre-populate the steps for stopping the compute and then launching the compute and doing the switch over of database. Then apart from that, you also have an option to customize your plan, right? Because whatever we do from the service is based upon the members you add, we provide the built-in recovery steps for you, right? But beyond that, there is something which is unique for your requirements, which we don't know, right? So that's where you have an option to create a user-defined step where you can bring your existing application, or even we have integration with OCA functions, right? So let's take a quick example, right? So if you want to start your app server or stop your app server, right? You can put a simple shell script, right? And you can call that script in a specific stage where you want to run, right? Again, the script, what I mentioned is just an example. It can be any language. As long as you're able to manually execute and it does the job for you, then you can simply plug in those scripts in the full stack DR. And also, we have integration with OCA functions. So if you're leveraging OCA functions for performing any task, then you can also add that as part of the DR plan. Okay, so I think I already talked about a bit, right? So this is the thing first you do, right? You create two separate protection groups, right? One in primary and one in DR. And then you associate the roles, right? So that the service understand which is primary and which is standby, right? And then on top of it, you can add your compute database and storage services, or depending on what our members we support and what is part of your business system, right? So first, that is the first thing you do in order to get started with the service. And then you create the DR plans. So this is another common question we get. So I'll take a minute to explain that, right? So so we allow to create the DR plans only in the protection group which has the standby role, right? The reason is, uh, let's say if there is an outage in the primary region, right, where your primary region is not itself accessible, that means you cannot even access the full stack data, right? Because we are also a regional service, right? So that's why the service has been designed in such a way, right? The plan can be created and executed only from the a protection group, which is designated as a standby region, right? So when you try to create a plan in the primary, you get an error saying we don't allow to create a plan. So that's the reason, and we have designed to tackle that the use case of you're able to use the service during the failover scenario.
Thanks, Raj. And did you know that you can use the OCI full stack DR automation with Oracle Database Cloud Services? Yes, and before we jump into that, so let me just take you through what Oracle Database Services are. So Oracle offers a range of database services in the Oracle Cloud. So in general, we can break them down by the scale and performance requirement for the system, and if the systems will reside in the Oracle Public Cloud or in a customer data center. In the Oracle Public Cloud, we offer our base database service that can run the standard and enterprise edition Oracle database and allows you the ability to select from single instance or a two-node rack database deployment that can scale to up to 128 cores and service up to 100 terabytes for data and Enrico. So this service runs the same database software as on-premise with a robust set of cloud automation functions tied to it that provides you an easy lift and shift solution to the cloud for databases not running on Exadata today. When you need more scale or performance, you can choose our Exadata database service, which brings the Exadata platform to the public cloud on dedicated infrastructure. The base database service and the Exadata database service are co-managed services in which Oracle manages the infrastructure and you manage the customer virtual machine hosting the database software and your data. All the Oracle database cloud services provide you with a robust set of cloud automation functions that enable you easily to conduct the VM and database lifecycle management tasks. For those who want a fully managed database experience, you can choose the autonomous database that can run on shared or dedicated Exadata infrastructure. And the Exadata database service on dedicated infrastructure have a 48-hour minimum term, making them a great cost-effective solution for all workload environments. So you can spin up a full-scale prototype of your application, conduct testing, and spin it down when you're done and only pay for what you use. Now, for those who cannot move to the public cloud due to latency or regulatory compliance, Oracle offers the co-managed Exadata database service on Cloud Customer and the fully managed autonomous database on Cloud Customer. The Oracle Database Cloud Services on Cloud Customer offers the same management models, cloud economics, and cloud automation as the services in the public cloud, but are deployed in the customer's data center. And did you know that the Exadata database service provides choice of multiple deployment models to suit your business and workload requirements? Yeah, so that's one of the greatest differentiators of Exadata. Like it gives you the flexibility in terms of where to deploy. So you can choose to run it on premises with a traditional CAPEX deployment model where you own and manage the complete system and have a total flexibility as how you will manage it. Or you can also run it in the cloud where Oracle manages the infrastructure and then you have all the automation to simplify your management tasks, and you can leverage on a pay-for-use subscription model that can dramatically reduce your cost. Oracle offers Exadata in the public cloud with Exadata Cloud Infrastructure, but with Exadata Cloud Customer, you can also benefit from a cloud deployment, but keep all your data safely inside your own data center. And Exadata is also available with multi-cloud deployments, where databases run on Exadata in Oracle Cloud and applications run in other clouds. And it's very simple to utilize the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Web Console to manage the Oracle Database Cloud Services. So you can use the navigation menu in the upper left corner to navigate to the database services pages where you can create, manage, and view your cloud database resources. For example, the Exadata database service can be managed from the web console by first selecting Oracle database in the navigation menu, and then you can select either Exadata on Oracle Public Cloud, which is the Exadata database service on dedicated infrastructure, or the Oracle Exadata database service on Cloud Customer. And with that, I'll hand it over back again to Suraj to talk about the Oracle Database Cloud Services integration. Okay, Suraj, over to you.
Okay, so now let's talk about the database services integration, right? Which is our key focus for this call. So for the database service, so what you do is example. Let's take an example for the BaseDB, right? Which is a lot of our customers use, and also Exadata, right? So let's for this slide, let's take an example of the BaseDB. So when you want to integrate with full stack DB, right? The first thing what you do is you set up the data guard, right? So another key important prerequisite is full stack DI will not set up the DR for you, right? So you have to use the respective services replication functionality, right? Example, for database, you will be using the data guard functionality to set up the standby system. Similarly, for other services, you'll be using the replication facilities. Right? For the database, the requirement is you set up the data guard depending on the services you use. Right? So, example for BaseDB, Exadb, and XSEC and Scale, you set up the standby DB system. And similarly, if you're using autonomous, then you basically set up the cross-region autonomous data guard. So that's the first thing as a prerequisite you need to have. And you ideally you should use cloud automation, right? Because that has a significant thing in terms of the members which you add, and also the pre-populated steps which we create automatically, right? Because if you don't use cloud automation, right, basically the cloud APIs or the in OCI console, then full stack DL will not be able to understand whether it has a primary or a standby role, right? So it's important you should have the cloud automation feature used in order to set up the data guard. But again, that's not a mandatory because there are a lot of customers who has multiple standby database or who use fast start failover and various requirements where we don't currently support through the cloud console. They still go ahead and set up the data guard manually. But if you use cloud automation for doing the setup the data guard, right, the built-in steps is really, really important for that in order to pre-populate the steps. So once you do that, then you add the primary and standby database to the respective protection groups based upon your regions. And then you go ahead and create the DR plans, right? So I mentioned we support various plan types like switchover, failover, and drills from the standby protection group region. So I have explained about the reasoning behind that, why we don't allow the DR plan creation in the primary. So we always allow in the standby protection group region. And of course, no one will have just a database, but apart from that, you can also add your compute storage and other services which we support, and then which is part of your business system based upon your requirement, you can add. And then once you've done that, right, then while creating the plan, full stack DR will analyze what members you added. Then it will automatically create the built-in plan groups and the steps based on the plan type you create, right? And then finally, you also have an option to customize the plan with the user-defined plan groups according to your requirements, where you can use your scripts or OCA functions in order to perform that step. Okay, so I talked about uh, the built-in cloud automation, right? The respective service. So there are two key things which the core database services are currently being enhanced, which is important for the drill operation, right? So I talked about for the drill, primarily our customers convert their physical standby to snapshot standby, right? And then once they completed the drill, they convert their snapshot standby to physical standby, right? So for BaseDB, XadBD, and Clouded Customer, and then XScale, currently the core services doesn't have the APIs for converting the physical standby to snapshot standby and vice versa. But the good news is the feature is coming up soon, right? So I don't have a clear timeline when that will be available, but it's going to start coming up pretty soon, starting with Exadata and Clouded Customer and other offering as well, right? So the significance of this thing, right? So when you create a start drill plan, right? Let's say you added a base DB with a primary and standby, and if you create a switchover and a failover plan, you'll be able to see the built-in recovery steps pre-populated because you have the APIs for that. And full stack DRA will able to introspect that and put that for you. But in the drill plan, because the core service doesn't have the APIs supported today, you'll not be able to see the built-in plans for the drill operation. Right? So that's the important point you want to understand uh, from this point. But the good thing is, since I mentioned about the plan can be customized with the user-defined scripts. So as of today, right, if you want to create a drill plan and use it, then you can put a simple script with the DGMGRL commands to convert your physical standby to snapshot standby for the start drill, and then snapshot standby to physical standby for the start drill. So that's a workaround you could do, and we have customers who does that. But this will improve. You'll be able to see that built-in recovery steps for drill plans as well as soon as the core database service introduce those APIs. And finally, I touched upon the various use cases our customers use uh, to set up data guard outside of cloud automation. The answer, I'm sure you would have might have guessed. If you have done that, you could still integrate the recovery steps with full stack DR, but you should use the user-defined plan groups, right? Because we don't know what exactly the roles of the database because the data guard status is not exposed to the control plane, right? So you must use the scripts for performing the role transition.
Hey
All
Suraj,
right.
there's just a question in the Q&A. Like,
Uh-huh.
how do you test for physical and logical block corruption of database backups? Can you simulate a recovery and generate reports on the status to get a higher fidelity of a successful failover? And is Arman included in the solution?
Sure, let me read through it. See, what the service primarily we do, right, is the role transition, right? So when if there is a corruption, right, or the data guard is not in a proper state during the the pre-checks, we will mark that as a failure. So you have to do and make sure your role database role has a proper status according to the database. Right? So that is something pre-check should caught. And if there is a failure, then ideally you not need to fix that. What is the issue behind that? And then sort that out. And then as soon as the pre-checks are validated again, then you could basically run the plan again. Right. And again, to reiterate again, right, this service is primarily helps to automate your recovery process, right? Not other operational issues. It's example, uh, generating reports or whichever order you have asked. Right? So those are all different use cases. Something is not primarily intended to do the role transition. Right? So just want to make it clear. This service is helps to do your role transition, assuming your replication is everything is intact. In case if there are issues, that will be getting caught during the pre-checks, so that you can sort that out, and then as soon as that is taken care, you can run the actual plan execution. Okay, so I've just summarized the all the plan types with all the database services, right? So that you get a overview of what kind of things you get from various plan types. So let me quickly go through that, right? So example, so there are four plan types, right? Switchover, failover, drill, stop drill, and stop drill. So I've already mentioned about the significance of creating the database, I mean the data guard setup through the cloud automation. Assuming if you do that, then for all the switchover and failover, right, for all the core services, I mean for all the database services, you should be able to see the built-in steps for the database depending on the plan type, like switchover and failover. For the drill, I've already explained the reason why we don't pre-populate the recovery steps. But for autonomous and then autonomous dedicated, then autonomous clouded customer. There are already APIs available for converting the primary to, I mean, standby to snapshot, and also even refreshable clones and full clones, right? So there are built-in steps pre-populated if you use, let's say, autonomous offerings automatically. But for a base XRDBD, Exascale, and XRDB clouded customer, as of today, you should leverage the user-defined scripts for that. But as I highlighted earlier, I mean, once those services have those things, then we will uh, integrate with service so that you'll also able to see similar steps for database switchover and failover for the standard and stop. Okay, so I will show some demos so that you can see what exactly the service looks like in case if you haven't got a chance to see the service yet. Okay, let me bring this one. Okay, so for the full stack DR, right, you need to go to migration and disaster recovery and then click disaster recovery protection groups. So this is the landing page and how you get to the service. So I opened up a couple of tabs. One is Ashburn, and the second one is Phoenix. Right. So assuming now primary is Ashburn and Phoenix is standby, I will go ahead and show you the type of integration you can do and how you go ahead and create protection groups and so on. So creating protection group is really, really easy. Right? So we just ask for things like what is the name, what is the compartment, an object storage bucket to store the logs, and then that's it. So you just provide few names, few details, and then hit create. And similarly, you go ahead and create a production group in the other region as well. And once you do that, then you basically assign the roles. Right? So let's take this simple example. So I have a production group which I've created now for a DB, which is only base DB, right? Right, where I've assigned a primary role because my primary database runs in Ashburn, and then my standby database runs in Phoenix. Right. So once you do that, then the next step is you'll be basically adding the members, right? So that is where you can discover what kind of database, your VMs, and then storage, and all the things which you deployed as part of your architecture, and that wants to be integrated with the FSDR service. So you can click add member, right? So these are the members which we support, which I talked about. So, for example, compute. This is autonomous database serverless. This is autonomous database dedicated. And then when you select the database, you get options to select various database type, right? BaseDB, Exadata public cloud, which is ExaDBD or ExaCS. And then this is ExaCC, and then this is Exadata and Exascale infrastructure. Right. Similarly, you can add a volume group, which is for the block storage and load balancer and so on. Right. So let's assume you want to add a primary and standby database, which is running on a base DB. Right. So what you need to do is select the base DB type, and then based upon the type, we automatically pre-populate the DB system. Right. So let's assume I have my primary database running in this DB system. Then it will automatically populate the database home and the database. Right. And since for the fully man not the fully managed service like BaseDB, ExaDB, and other services, right, where for invoking a switchover operation or a failure operation, it requires this DB a password. We ask you to store that password in a secret by creating a vault, right? So we ask for that details as well. So you just need to provide the password of your sysdb credentials here. That's it. Once you're done that, then you can just simply add, right? So before this call, I just added the primary and standby, right? So you could see this is my primary DB running in Ashburn, and similarly, this is my standby DB running in Phoenix, right? So similarly, you can add other members like compute and other things as well, right? Once you're done with that, then you can come ahead and create a plans, right? So I mentioned when you want to create a plan, it is always we are allowed to create the plans only in the standby region, right? So even I can show you. So example, by mistake, if you try to create a plan in primary region, you will get a warning. And it just says we don't allow to create the DR plans in the primary region, right? So always we allowed to create the plans in the DR region. So I just went ahead and created a plan before the calls, but creating a plan is really, really simple. You just provide a name and create the plan type. And once you're done, you can just hit create. So as soon as you hit the plan creation, right, then basically the service introspects the member what you added, and then it pre-populate the recovery steps for you, right? So example, here I just have a simple one primary database and one standby database from my BaseDB system. What it did is it basically pre-populate the pre-checks for you, and then it also created a switchover for this database. Right? Since I just had only one member for this, it had just one step here, right? But assuming, let's say you have 10 primary database, 10 standby database from BaseDB, and then bunch of autonomous database, whatever you are doing as part of your business system, then the plan will become big, and you'll be able to see the pre-populated state accordingly, right? So once you're done with that, then you can go ahead and run a pre-check and execute a plan, right? Again, as I mentioned, you also have an option to customize your plan with the user defined, right? So let's say I want to stop my application with a script, right? Then you can just provide a compute instance which will be used as a jump host to run a script, and then you can provide your parameters and then execute that and then add that as a plan. Okay, so after that, if you want to run a pre-check, right? So this is the validation. So I just want to give a pre-check, and then if you hit pre-checks, right, what it does is behind the scenes, it will make sure based upon the primary database and standby database, right? What I've added to make sure whether the data guard is in proper role, whether it's in sync, right? So all the things which is required for a proper role transition, it will make sure it is being taken care. And assuming my plan pre-checks is done, then you can go ahead and execute the actual plan, right? So that's how it is simple, right? But I just want to show you the database part first, and then I will show you another plan which has exhaustive other things as well, right? And I mentioned about you can monitor it, right? So example, you can just come here and then click a button where you can view the log and download the log, right? So now you can see the state is a success, right? Because both the roles has proper state, and it is in a proper role as well, right? So now if I want to invoke a plan, right, I can just come here and execute a plan and select the plan type, and then I can just run a plan. So if I just do that, then it just go ahead and execute the plan for you, right? So this is how you can get started if you want to add your database stuff, right? And similarly, you can also add other things like compute and other. So let me show you another plan where we have things beyond database, right? So that you get a uh, full overview of how powerful this service would be, right? So let me show you the members. So example, this is a pair where Ashburn has a standby because I did a switchover, and then Phoenix is having the primary role. So if you look at the members, right, you can see the type of members which I added to my protection group, because these are the apps and other services which I use beyond the database, which takes care of my entire business system, right? So I'm running my containers application in OK cluster, and then I am using autonomous database, and then I have the storage which is configured as a volume group for the block volumes, and I also use a the file system, which is the file storage replication using the native replication, and also I have a couple of compute instances which I want to move across to the other region, right? And similarly, in the DR region, I have also added the respective members depending on the topology. So if I look at the plan right here, it will be pretty big, right? Because I have added a bunch of other things beyond the database, right? So based upon the member types which I showed you, what the service did is it pre-populated the recovery steps because I've created the switchover plan. That's why you could see things like shutting down everything in the primary region and then starting up things in the standby region, right? So here, file system, we are unmounting, computing is stopping, and then for OK cluster, we are cleaning up the artifacts, right? So all the things which is required to shut down the thing gracefully in the primary region. And once it is done, then we do the role transition, launching the compute, mounting the file system on the compute, and then performing the things in OK, right? So this is how you can take advantage of your entire uh, full stack beyond the database, right? In order to convert your recovery process, which you manually do, into a plan which has everything pre-populated, right? And also you could customize your additional recovery steps, right? So example here, maybe I have another plan which has user-defined steps as well, right? So here, if you notice, I have added a couple of user-defined modules where I want to stop everything. And if I want to even verify something, right, before I move on, you can even add a step for pause. So when coming to this step, right, the plan gets paused, and then you can do some validation, and then you can resume the plan in order to move forward, right? And all the things will be logged in here. So I showed you the plan execution. This is how the plan execution looks like, right? So uh, it has everything documented, and then all the recovery timings, right? How much time each step it took, and then you can view the logs. And since we store everything in object storage, all the things are available for auditing, and then for postmortem, whatever you need to do, right? It can be done, and it will be available as long as you keep the object storage available. And finally, you can also see how much time it takes, right? Example, this plan took me around 90 minutes. And if you look at the amount of tasks which we are doing, it's multiple things we are doing, right? So example, even from file system, compute, database, OKE clusters, and custom scripts, right? So everything can be part of this. And then it helps to improvise your RT. So that's what I want to show you, right? Again, I the focus is want to give a quick idea about the service and also the tight integration we have with the database services. And apart from database, you can also integrate other services with full stack DR. And you also have the flexibility to customize the plan if you have any user defined steps which you want to do by using your existing automation scripts. All right. So this slide has some resources. So example, uh, I have a live lab which I've authored. So in case if you want to get hands-on, you can try this live labs where you there'll be a complete walkthrough of how to set up full stack DR protection groups, create plans, add members, right? So maybe if you want to get a quick hands-on, I highly recommend this live lab to try out. And of course, we have multiple YouTube playlists where we go through step-by-step documentation of how to add members of, let's say, BaseDB or Exadata and so on. Right. So there are a bunch of valuable resources available, and then you can use it according to your requirements. All right, Leo, any questions?
Yep. Before we open the floor to Q&A, I just wanted to share like where they can find other resources. So you can also join our public Slack workspace. The workspace name is Exadata dash database dash service. This is where we upload all our get started guides and the review of this tech talk. So we're also going to share in that workspace the uh, resources that Suraj have shared for OCI full stack DR. So join the discussion about anything about database cloud services. So you can just join our Slack channel. So you can use the join link, and once you have the join link, so you just need to log in using your email account for Slack, then check your email for the code to set up the 2FA, and that's it. So welcome to our workspace. So once you join the Exadata database service workspace, so you'll also be meeting our Gen AI chatbot. So we have Ask Debbie, which is a Gen Dev AI chatbot. So Ask Debbie is developed and running on Oracle Database 23 AI on Exascale, and it uses vector search. So it is trained to answer any questions about database cloud services. Like if you have questions for Exadata database service, base database service, and also Exascale. Then for database cloud service, hands-on workshops and sprints. So we also have live labs for get started guides for our database cloud services. So we have one for base database service, Exadata database service on dedicated infrastructure, Exadata database service on cloud customer, and also Exadata database service on exascale infrastructure. And then we also have sprints. So sprints is more of like a quick answers to questions. So it's sort of an interactive FAQ about Exadata database service. So when you search for Exadata database service in Live Labs, so it will show you both the hands-on workshops and sprints that we have created. And then now we open the floor for any Q&A. Let's see. Yeah, so I guess we're good. And yeah, so this brings this session of our Tech Talk with Leo and Suraj to an end. So until our next session. So stay safe and be prosperous. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Which is